Well, I want to thank the African Center of Strategic Studies for inviting me to be with you and to share some of my thoughts with you. I find it very valuable because I think, let me start bottom up, that one of the greatest challenges that we face in our continent is that we don't prepare our leaders. I have found in my experience that most of our leaders tumble into position of authority. And because they are not prepared for it, other people want to show them that I was responsible for you being there, so you have to do ABC for me. But if you have been prepared and you have moved on your own to be there, then you will be able to walk satisfactorily. But we will talk about that as time goes by in the few 30, 40 minutes that I will be with you. I want to talk about effective leadership in African security sector. The first thing one has to think about is that word leadership. It's a big word, very small to some people, but it's a big challenge. Just go into the computer and Google leadership, and you will be amazed. You will be almost a billion references on leadership. So it is then very difficult to define that word leadership. We'll talk about it later. If you ask, there are many definitions as how many people you talk to about leadership. But one thing that is clear is that leadership is important. We look at the leaders, some see them soldiers, some see leaders as CEOs, coaches, teachers, ministers, even we parents. We are all leaders in our own level. And I'm very happy that Raymond talked about it, that there are layers of leadership. But most of the time, when I hear people talk about leaders, they are just looking at the president or the chief executive. He's just part of the pyramid or the ladders that make leadership. And because of that, some people say there's this debate about nature and nurtured leaders, whether leaders are born or they are made. You hear all this. But I think we will talk more on that as we progress in our discussion. But what is absolutely important is that you as leaders at your level, moving up to the higher level of becoming strategic leaders, are very unique. And that it is a crucial thing that we must have a common understanding of what confronts you when you become a leader at a strategic level. Our continent. So in some of the comments, I was so lucky to be here. I will not dwell in some of the things I wanted to say because Dr. Gilpin covered them very well. And if I repeat anything, it's because of emphasis. So I will run through my first so that we can have time to interact later. But we come from a continent that is blessed with so much untapped resources, both in agriculture and mineral. We also have the potential to produce over 40% of the whole hydroelectric power that you will need in the world, just from that continent. And I think my friend from Botswana and others from here, I think we are the center of diamond in the whole world. You have more diamond in Africa than in any continent in the world. And they say diamonds are forever, so Africa is forever. And cocoa We produce 70% of world cocoa. We produce 60% of world tea. And I can go on and on and on. But then the most important thing is that then why are we so poor? Raymond talked about part of it, but why are we so poor? With all these things that God has blessed us with, why are we so poor? This is what we will discuss. And a lot of people say the cause of our challenges and poverty, they attribute it to the external factor, the external part of the world. And one of my colleagues, during the discussion, I was happy to hear him say the hard choices that some of the developed world are also part of our problem. And I say so because of their own national interests. But this is where we have to understand ourselves, that countries act in their national interests. So you do not have to blame them. In acting in their own national interests, they may do certain things that we may not think are proper. But let's not crucify them quickly. They are acting in their own national interests. What are we doing as Africans in our own continent? Do we put our nations first? Or how come the billions of dollars that are moving out of the country, they don't have legs, they have been moved by some people? We'll talk more about that also. But I still want to say that the external factor cannot be dismissed. What? Exploitation that we have had in Africa. First, what did we have? We have slave trade. The people that have suffered more in slave trade in the world are Africans. People, other continents, other nationalities move on their own to come to other parts of the world or the new world. Most Germans that came to America came as Germans on their own. Most of Africans that came to America came as slaves. So we have suffered from slavery. And who were the people taken out for slaves, both to North Africa and the Middle East and to other parts of the world? They are not the lazy people. They are not the hungry-looking people. They are the strong people that are taken. So you can imagine what we lost in that period of slavery. And the other issue is that as the issue of slavery was dying, then we had what one of you have already said. The Europeans didn't want to fight themselves, so they sit down and say, okay, over the map, they shared Africa, and that's why you find most of our boundaries are straight lines. I'll crack a small joke with you. One of my friends from Ghana told me, say, do you know what? In my village, there is a soccer field. If you are playing on this part of the soccer field, you are playing local match. But on the same pitch, if you move to the other side, you are playing international. And I said, what do you mean? He said the boundary between Togo and Ghana passes through that soccer pitch. So it depends. If you are a Ghanaian on this side, if the ball moves there and you follow it, you are playing international. That is the challenges we have in Africa. Ethnic groups were covered, were cut into different places. Cultures were divided, and we have that. Then in the middle of that, colonialism came. And let's not deceive ourselves. The colonial masters will tell us they have done ABC to improve us. But there is no improvement by any colonial master that it was developmental for the development of Africa. No, it was for their own interests. Look at the railway lines in West Africa. They are from the north to the sea. Pick up the goods and everything, the commodities, to the sea and ship them to their own countries. So let's not deceive ourselves that anybody will say he left a system. To be honest, look at all the African colonies. How many schools were there? How many professionals were trained? How many people were prepared for leadership? How many people were prepared for governance? When the colonial masters found it necessary to leave, they left, some of them grudgingly. If you go to Mozambique, some of them poured concrete into buildings so that we cannot use them. These are realities that have happened. Then, as we were coming into independence in the 60s, as we were told, what then happened? The Cold War. The Cold War came. It doesn't matter whether you are slaughtering your people. It's as long as you are backing one of the factors, they will make sure they help you. One of the countries, the major powers in the Cold War, as long as you are friendly, you get your support. Whether you are killing your people, whether you are starving your people, they don't care. And what did you have? Small arms started flying all over the place. When the Cold War was finishing, then we now started in our own continent. What do you find? Killing ourselves, mass killing, genocide, and everything. So we cannot, the external world cannot completely say they are not responsible to some of our problems. What do you see after the Cold War? Now we are talking about aid. What type of aid do you get? They are tied down to certain things. They are given conditionalities. If you don't fulfill that condition, you can't move, you can't have it. And they are all for governance, not for development. A lot of the aids we get from the other part of the world is for governance, giving you conditions, not for development. But I then don't blame them, because we'll get into what I'm going to say next. We had great leaders in Africa, Chaka the Zulu, Mansa Musa, and all the rest. We had great leaders. But then the problem that started coming now was the challenge, whether we are to go on our traditional way or to go the modern way. And that is why I also like what Raymond said here, that make up your mind. Do you want to follow the French system or the English system or the American system or Chinese system or whatever system? The most important thing, you are not an American. And you have to understand the history and the evolution of what have happened in this country. You have to go to the French and know about the French Revolution. So we cannot just blindly, and this is what happened. Our first political masters then blindly follow, copying. If today you are copying a model, that is what even when we don't understand the system, we are copying them. And what do we have? Confusion. Look at our laws in Africa, even about simple things as marriage. In a country, is it a traditional way of marriage or is it the Western way of marriage? In Nigeria, we have a law that talks about bigamy, and they said a man can marry more than one wife. And then in our culture, to show that you are a rich big man, you cannot have one wife only. So these are some of the contradictions we have. And up to today, 50 years down the line, we are doing nothing about them, and then we're still blaming the past. Yes, the past is there. We cannot run away from our past. But I think by now, we should be able to know where we want to do. Over the agree, the AU come up, the OAU and the AU come up to recognize the borders that we have at independence. So if those are the borders, we agree with them. Let's see how we build nation. But what do you find? Most of us, our loyalty is to our tribe, then to our ethnic groups, then to our religion. The last person we consider is the country itself. And that's why it's very easy for people to carry 1 billion out of your country, because they don't see that country. They see as part of their own national cake they are having. So these are things that we have. We have challenges of leadership, which I will talk about, but we also have the challenges of followership. And that is the point again Raymond was saying here. If you really love somebody, and you see the person walking into fire, Will you just tell him, no, 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 because he's my boss or because he's the leader, you will follow him and enter the fire? No. So why are we following leaders that are taking us into fire, that are causing killings, instability, famine, that are encouraging trading in human beings across the country, that are forcing our children and our daughters to start migrating across Sahara Desert because they think there is an El Dorado in the Western world? These are things we will talk about. And what do you find? This says most of, as a summary of what we have said. We have threat in virtually everything, deficit in governance. We have poor health, and people are not, no education, people are not given the opportunity to actually excel in their potential. This is just a summary. Because there's one thing that is missing. Most of our government are looking for how to sustain the regime and not the country. Regime survival, preservation of the regime is placed above the people. And that's why the human security issue is taking the back stage. If you look at what one time American Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, stated, if everything he has stated there is what we are still suffering for in most of our continent. Any society that seeks to achieve security against the background of acute food shortages, population explosion, low level of productivity per capita income, low technological development, and that's why people like me are still analog, inadequate and sufficient utilities, and chronic unemployment, has a false sense of security. That is the false sense of security we have. Because all these things are what we are still suffering from in our continent. So, how about this? Look at this young poor man. He may, if he is given an opportunity and to excel, he may be a great strategic thinker. You can see him thinking, given the opportunity, maybe this is a strategic thinker we are allowing to rotten because we are not giving him the potential of what he should expand himself to be. And I found this very interesting because that I'm considering a career in organized crime. And that is what is happening in our continent and in most of our government. It's just an organized crime by some people. But you don't blame also the people for the organized crime because the followership accepts it. If somebody in my country was caught with 1,000 pounds sterling in cash in his private home in London, and when he came back home, the government insisted that he must be impeached. In the process, people from his place were saying, leave our son alone. After all, it's our money. Don't disturb him. When you have that type of followership, then you will now know where we have challenges. It's not only the leadership, but the followership is a challenge. And then, is it private you want a government? And the most interesting thing is the footnote. I would suggest government, they never go to jail. And that's what Rayburn have just said. Somebody has taken away $10 million of your public fund, and he is fined $10,000. Oh, taking $10 million, and then all that happened, the case is in court and lasts for the next 10 years. Everybody has even forgotten about it. So you can see why we cannot progress. we can't progress because of this type of thing. So this is where we now reach. When the president of the Security Council in February 2011 said this, that security and development are interdependent and mutually reinforcing. No sustainable development is possible in a country threatened by internal insecurity, crisis, and conflict. At the same time, there can never be sustainable peace without development. So it's our choice. It's what we want. If we want to develop, then we must have security. But if we want to have security, we must have the rule of law. And if that is what will move us forward, then that is where you that are seated here and your colleagues at home are very important. You are very important because you will be the real nucleus and the real foundation of change, positive change. It's ethical thing. And I will address, hopefully later, at one point, the question from my colleague and friend from Ghana about compromise. What do you do? I'll address that. And if I do forget, please remind me. But it's up to us. And that is what we ask ourselves. The organization you are representing, what is their role? Or what is the mandate that set that organization? Whether you are from the military, Army, Air Force, Navy, Gendarmerie, police, the judiciary, you are the border guards, you are from custom or immigration. What is your role of your organization? Are you living by those definitions of the role given by your organization? If you are not, I think in a general terms, all these organizations are created for the safety of the state and its citizens. That's what the organizations are there for. But when due to your action or inaction, your organization become the cause of instability, the cause of injustice, and the cause of marginalization, then we have a problem. And that is why it is very important in the issue of security sector reform. You will hear so much about it. You must have read so much about security sector reform. But what I will say is that you, as a security sector leader, your job is to provide to protect your national integrity of your country, the territory of your country, and your national security, and the maintenance of rule of law. In the broad shell, I'm sure that is what it is. So the question is that, is your action protecting the territorial integrity of your country? Is it helping in security of your country? Are you turning a blind eye because you are at the border post and somebody is going to give you $10,000 and you allow him or her to get away with $100,000? Are you saying that because he's from my tribe, because he's from my ethnic group, he can do it and nothing will happen? These are the fundamental issues that I hope when you are leaving this place, you will live with them. So the important thing of the security sector reform is to make sure that those of us that have something to do with the security, because we are talking about human security, not physical security as we used to think before. Education is part of human security. If your community, if the population is ignorant, then there is a security challenge. So the definition of leadership. That is what President Truman stated, and Chester Banner has its own. My definition is ability to influence. And I stop there. Ability to influence. It could be positively or negatively. Because even organized crime people, they have leaders. Even the greatest actors in the non-state actors, they have leaders. And the organized, democratic, elected people, they have leaders. So, what is important about leadership is the ability to influence. Are you a leader? Do you have an ability to influence those people under you? And I'm sure your influence will be positive and not negative because you are not among the organized crime. You are leading people who are operating in a real threat, whether it is bombing, whether it is terrorism, whether it is law-intensive operation, whether it is insurgency within our country. You are leading people in the real hard life. The environment, desert with habub all over the place, or you are in a mountainous area or tropical region, you are leading them. And in your action and inaction, whatsoever happen, there will be real casualty. A lot of what we are seeing in our continent today is internally displaced people in their millions, refugees in their millions. And that is the continent that we have all agreed that is blessed with all the agricultural things, blessed with all the minerals. Something is wrong. And for anything to happen, we have to take the decision. From your own side, you know there's real constraint. You won't have all the equipment you require, you won't have all the money you require, and you will not have all the manpower you require. So that is where leadership comes down. How do you effectively utilize what you have to meet your mandate or your role that you are asked to perform? That is creative and innovative thinking has to come. And that is all the attributes that is required for you as a leader. And Shahadi talked about it's a process, leadership. It's a process that you learn and you move on. But you can't, please don't blame me. My background has been in the military I was in the army for 40 years. So my background is the military. See Field Marshal Slim. There are no good or bad units. There are only bad officers. They make and break the unit. Anywhere there is failure, it's bad leadership. Anywhere there is success and good story, it's good leadership that makes it. And he went on to say in 1949, when only very few of us in this room were born at that time, he said, and it is still true today, today we cannot afford anything but good ones, that's good leaders. You all have leadership in you. Develop it by thought, by training, and by practice. All of you seated here are leaders. And you have leadership potential in you. It's left for you to develop it positively for the improvement of your subordinates, your organization, and your country, and then our continent. Or the failure of your organization, your country, and our continent. The choice is ours. So, I am saying, and there's only one person from Nigeria. But when I had the privilege in 2003 to become the Chief of Army Staff, I said the Nigerian Army need an attitudinal change, and that was the statement. Remove security sector and put Nigerian Army. To adopt a professional attitude to duty by inculcating discipline, regimentation, service delivery. Why is the government paying your salary? Why is the taxpayer of your country paying tax to keep you, to provide service? Whatsoever service, are you delivering that service? If there isn't, then we must have an attitudinal change. We must change our attitude positively to what, and the issue of ethic has come up. If we do all that, the poor woman on the donkey who goes to fetch water and firewood and to the farm, the cattle rearers who move, the people can freely move, they will be secured enough to do whatsoever they want to be, and there will be development if those of us who have been given opportunity by our country to serve as it is required. Communication is very important. You must be able to communicate. My first rule of communication, you must be able to communicate with those under you. And you must be able to understand them and they understand you. That is what leadership is all about. Then you must be able to communicate with those by your side, peers and others. And that is why you are so blessed and so lucky to be among yourselves here, to start learning how to interact with each other, how you can pick up a phone. And I was telling some of you, some of my friends, General Abdullahi, Babarka Gay and the rest from Senegal, when I have a problem, I just pick a phone and I call. And when they have something, they call. Because we are met along the line as we are growing up as young officers. I was telling another person that I met the Chief of Defense Forces of their country when we were both colonels. And we still communicate. So you have the opportunity, make use of it. Make the best use of it, because nobody has the monopoly of knowledge. And then beware of the media. I'm not saying you should run away from the media, but you must be able to use the media for what you want to achieve. For the messaging you want to deliver, you must use the media correctly. Or else, the media will carry you to where you don't want to be. I have a personal experience, and maybe during the question answer, I will tell you how the media carried me to where I didn't want to be. And media, I also mean the worst today to you, the digital world, the social media. You have to grapple with that. How do you go about it? These are the challenges you have. And remember that your men and women are going to work in very difficult, threatening situations. Landing in somewhere with a helicopter, with lightning, rain, thunder, and everything on. And you want them to perform. One thing I will suggest to you, that teach your subordinate not to run away from the media, but to know what to tell the media. Once the media asks a question, tell them what you are doing. Tell your subordinates to tell them what they are doing. If he is a rifleman, tell the media, I'm a rifleman, I do A, B, C, D. If they ask him anything about the company, it's not my job. Meet the company commander. But when you say no comment or I don't know, then you are opening up your organization. But people, your subordinates, should discuss and tell people, this is my job. Answer question within your job, and you will find little or no problem. And remember, whether internally in your country, there are international organizations, which I learned you are going to look into. You must interact with international organizations. And if you are in peacekeeping, which a lot of your countries, I have met a lot of your compatriots in so many missions in Sierra Leone when I was a deputy force commander, in Darfur when I was a force commander. From the United Nations, I have visited some of your country compatriots who are in other peacekeeping missions when I was a deputy military advisor at the UN headquarters. So, you will, and you must, and your supporters will interact with the international community. You must teach them the ethic, you must teach them the way to do it, and you yourself, you can't teach somebody what you don't know. That means you must learn and stay on top and above the curve. Now, when your subordinates have done something good, you must give them a tap and a pat at the back. You must say, well done. You have done well. When they have done good for your country, when they have done good for the organization, you must help them. And somebody said, if you throw your heart over the fence, the rest of your body will follow. Your heart cannot be over the fence and your body is somewhere. Your body and heart must be together. And that's why you should aim at the heart of your organization and your subordinates through trust. And the cornerstone of it is the alignment of honesty, telling the truth and doing what is honest, and integrity, that is doing what you say you will do. If you do that, your subordinates will be happy, they will be pleased, and the organization itself will move on. Learn to say congratulations when your subordinates have done something good. Learn to say thank you to them. And if you fail, don't say as the leader that the organization has failed. Say, I have failed, because you are the leader. If your subordinates have done something good, a voicemail, call them. If they are not, leave a voicemail to the person. Oh, you have done a good job. Oh, I've seen your report. It's well written, it's good and everything. Encourage them to do what is right. Send an email to say, oh, I appreciate what you have done. And when is their birthday, send a note, send a birthday card. In one of the organizations I worked for, every month, when I couldn't get everybody to celebrate his birthday every day, we fixed one day in the month. And all the people that have birthday in that month, we spend 30 minutes together, get a cake, share it, and have some jokes and fun together. And I found it bonded us together. And honestly, without exaggeration, the day I was leaving that organization, some people cried with tears. That is the bonding that was between us. Simple act of just a cake. So, how about saying, may I help you? And I'm happy that you are going to visit George Washington Place. In my reading, I found out that George Washington was not the most brilliant tactician that America ever had as a general, but he was very unique. And what was unique, because he was in the heart of his men. He sleeps and wakes up with them. If they are to walk 5 kilometers, he is with them in the 5 kilometers. So they have him, the men have him in their mind. And that is why today, in this country, you cannot find any American that will not tell so good and describe General George Washington as one of the toughest, best generals. Just because he walked to the heart of his men and women that he served with them. So, when they have done something good, give them, if it's a medal, give them to recognize. And as leaders, I would expect you to have this command. I have always found it very important, this mission command issue. The intention, you must tell your subordinates the intention of the higher commander. And where do they fit into that? If they know that as a custom officer, if you allow people to pass with goods and services and smuggling, the problem is that you will not have enough money in the treasury. And because you don't have enough money in the treasury, you will not be able to have the health centers and clinic, and you will not be able to have the schools that your children will attend. Then people will begin to understand their role and where they fit in the whole equation. So, and then give your subordinates the laxity, the degree to work within the bound of what you are. Don't command everything. Now, I think since we come from Africa, I want to end this part of presentation with talking about animals. Because you know why I'm laughing? I remember in 1974 when I came to the Army Officer Basic Course in Fort Knox. And during 4th of July in 1974, I followed one of my American mates, and we went to his home in Richmond, Virginia. And I told him, we went to the zoo, and I told him, do you know that honestly today is the first day I've seen a live elephant with my eyes? I say, how can you do that? An African? When you live with them? That is the feeling. So some of the things I'm going to talk about animals, though you are from Africa, you may not have even thought about them. You may not have even seen some of them. Because I saw the first elephant, living live elephant in the United States and not in Africa. The horse. When I joined as a cadet in the military academy, horse riding was one of the subjects that we were being taught. And I was so mad. I said, as a young cadet, I came to join the military academy to be trained to be an officer, to command men and women, and now I'm being, what has horse riding got to do with that? Later part, I got to understand that horse riding is very important. It later in life I understood that there are two things about horse riding. You are either riding the horse or the horse is riding you. If you are riding the horse, you will take the horse wherever you want to go, and the horse will go. And you don't just go and sit on the horse and start riding it. There are a lot of things you must do. Pat the horse, make the horse feel you are nice, and when the horse have done a good job and everything, you give him a pat on his back, and he said you feed him with good food, you are close to him, make him feel happy, he will serve you. But when you decide the first thing, you go to the horse and start whipping the horse. By the time you sit on the horse will ride you either into the lake, into water, into fire, or somewhere. So that is what I discovered later on about simple issue of horse riding. It's just like leadership. You are either moving your unit, or your unit is moving you as a person to where they want you to be. The crab. I don't know how many of you have eaten crab. I used to like crab cake a lot. Do you know something about the crab? Try it next time you have an opportunity. Get 1 or 2 crabs and put them in a container. If you don't close that container, those crabs will run away. But put 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The more you put, you don't need to cover it. No crab will get out. What happens is that each crab that is trying to get out, the other one will pull him down. If this one is trying to get down, the other one will pull him down. So the crab has this pull down syndrome. And that is a lot of our community, a lot of us and everything. Instead of working as a team, no, we must pull the other person down. If I can't get out, you can't get out. And if you run that type of leadership, you are in big problem in your organization. You must allow people to grow. You must give them a space enough within law and order, within the regulation. You must give them room to move. You must give them room to grow. Don't be like the crab. Because they have PhD, pull him or pull her down. The shark. I found out that, the shark is one of the biggest animals in the sea. A full grown up shark is about 40 feet long. But you know one interesting thing? That if you get a baby shark and put it in an aquarium that is about 1 meter or 1 yard, that baby shark will never, even at the age of 30, will never grow bigger than that aquarium. It stays within the limit of where you put him. And that is the problem with some of our organizations. We, the people that are in charge, we don't give our subordinates room to gain, to have their potentials, to grow. We restrict them. We give them don't. Not telling them the do's and giving them a tap at the back for doing the right thing. We restrict them in their movement and they don't grow. And the organization itself does not grow. And what do you find? Stagnation. And that is part of the challenge that I believe we have in our continent. Because we put people as big, those that can have wonderful ideas. Those are the people we first shoot down. You are talking too much. You think you know too much. How can you? Is it the only person? No. And that's what I want to tell you, my friend, about compromising. When I was growing up, when I was a major in the Nigerian Army, I was privileged to be the military assistant to the chief of army, the head of the army. And we formed a little group of majors. We talk where it matters. No gossips. But we'll sit down and we know those who have access to the top people. And since, like myself, I was privileged to be military assistant, we'll find good ideas, those things we know that will grow the system, those things that will allow us, the small shark, to grow in the sea and become big sharks. We advise our bosses. But we will say it only when there is the right atmosphere. Not being so insubordinate, not claiming we know too much, but we allow, and when you are lucky to have a leader that has a good listening eye and ready to accept superior argument, then you are in it. And I am positive, our group, we are few, I can boast of some of the things my little group sell to the leadership, and they brought good policy for the Nigerian Armed Forces. So you don't have to fight anybody. The way to do it is what you have to discover and find out within yourself. And you can never change any society from the bottom. Again, with all sense of humility, when I became the chief of army staff in 2003, I had a meeting with all the lieutenant colonels and below in Nigeria, in every division I visited. I'll get them all in one location. And I will tell them, the army is yours. My army is finished. But you have an opportunity to advise me to see how we move forward. And that is how we came up with the policy in Nigerian army of the army of the next decade, the transformation of Nigerian army based on that. And I had a committee that worked on the transformation of Nigerian army for the next decade. It came out in 2004, and we had a blueprint. But I'm sorry to say, things change, and that is the issue of leadership. I am not saying that people derail, but I am blaming myself that maybe I didn't sell it properly for people to understand and imbibe it. So the blame is mine and not those after me. The last animal I want to talk about is the ant. A very irritating, sometimes annoying animal. How destructive that small, tiny animal can be. And very frustrating sometimes to deal with ants. Their nuisance value is much above any gain you will have by eating ants for those who eat it, because they have some nutrients, they say. But their nuisance value is more than that. So what is there about that animal? If you study the ant, they look ahead. They plan. They will sure during the raining season, they will gather all what they have during harvest period. Look, when you study them, you see how they are moving things, storing for the rainy season. When the rainy day comes, they are ready. The ants don't give excuses because they say that excuses are the raw material for failure. If you start giving excuses, then you are looking for the way of failing. Rather, they don't give up. If the ants, if you look at them, you will find they will move a very big seed, a big thing, an animal they have captured or something, they will move something far bigger than themselves. They don't give up. They will find a way out. And they realize that in life, you are either knocked down or you are knocked out. But the ants have always said that when they are knocked down, they are not knocked out. They will find a way out of it. But most of us, when we are knocked down, we lie down there and say, I give up. Because we feel we have been knocked out. We have to be like the ant. We can be knocked down, but not knocked out. There's positive thinking, the way out of how they will do. And they work as a team. And they fight as a team. They are very perseverant. If they see an obstacle, they go over it, they go under it, they go around it. Whatsoever it is, they go through it, but they never give up. And that is what I will want you to learn from the ant. You must work as a team. And individualism will carry you little to nowhere. You must work as a team. You must communicate properly. And that's why the ants, they communicate, and you see they can maintain one line, while long they meander, thousands of them will follow. They have their signals, they have their communication, they don't have iPhones. But they communicate, and better than most of us with the iPhone. They know when to go to bed. They don't have an alarm to wake them up. Because everything is done systematically. And that is what we should learn to do. They work together. Sometimes they fight together. And most of the time they die together. And that is what I think we as military people and security sector leaders will have to do. Let me quickly run up this and then say one word to some of the comments I want from the questions that we discussed from my personal experience. You have to be a kindness. The best and the most beautiful thing in the world cannot be seen or touched. They must be felt by the heart. You must make your people feel that you love them, you cherish them, that each one of them has some beauty that he is bringing into the organization to move the organization people forward. And people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Just like the horse also. Patience is bitter, but the fruit is very sweet. If you are patient and you move things systematically, you will find a good fruit from that. And show recognition to your people. So that at the end, development without security is not possible. But security without development, even if you succeed, is just a temporary thing. And that is what is happening in most of our countries in Africa. There is some development. Most of our countries have iPhones. So we have network system, we have television, we have all these things. But the gap between the rich, there is no middle class in most of our countries. You are either there or you are here. No middle class. And any society without middle class is heading for doom. So, in concluding this part, I want you to, quoting from Mark Anderson, I want you to walk the talk. Do as I do. But some of our leaders say, do as I say, but don't do as I do. If you are that type of leader, you will never succeed. Keep it simple and keep it real. I don't want to go more than that. Celebrate success. We have talked about it. Know that courage matters, and this is it. You'll be able to go to your boss and tell him the truth in a good way, in a respectful way, especially, in Africa, you can't point fingers at your leader, as your boss. But you can talk to him gently, and you will succeed in getting what you want. Take responsibility. If your organization fail and you are the leader, say, I have failed. Don't say they have failed. You are the leader. Take responsibility. And if you have advised your boss wrongly and it backfires, take responsibility. And as the boss, if something has happened, don't say these, no. I take responsibility. Develop a service attitude. I've talked about it. You know why your organization is there. What service is that organization supposed to render? Do your people know what role they are supposed to play in that? And then aim for the heart. After all, even in marksmanship or even firing weapon, where do you aim first? The best way is to aim at the heart. You know that once you hit the heart, it's gone. So the same thing in your relationship. Aim at the heart of your men and women, and you will find them be very receptive. Make a difference. If you are not going to add any value to your organization, if you are not going to bring any positive change to your organization, then we are in trouble. And the taxpayers are in trouble. And all of us are in trouble. And that is what Maxwell said, and I still believe in it, that everything rises and falls on leadership, especially if you want to be an effective leader. I have talked about followership. I'm now going to talk about quickly, how many minutes do I have more? Okay, all right. Let me take another 5 minutes or so to talk to you about my personal experience in some of the discussion I've had. I've shared one with you. As a young Major Lieutenant Colonel, we formed a little group, and we started talking where it matters. No backbiting, no being disloyal, but we tell our bosses, if there is a decision is taken wrong, you tell it. I will tell you, which year are we now? 2015. I think I'm not going to, and it's non-attributory also. When I was the Chief of Defense Staff, my president happened to be the chairman of the AU. Not the chairperson, the chairman. You know, when they have the meeting, they always have a chairman of the heads of state and the council. He was the chairman. And there was this issue that came up about one peacekeeping, and he volunteered, and he now said Nigeria was going to provide a battalion. And he came back. And I knew I was in trouble, because I was positive if Nigeria provides a battalion for that mission, we are going to overstretch ourselves. You all know that if you deploy one battalion in the peacekeeping, you are engaging 3 battalions. And at that time, we had 2 battalions in Liberia, and we had 4 battalions in Darfur. And we still had the Niger Delta problem that we were facing. So additional 1 battalion means 1 brigade, because 3 battalions I now have to tie down to that. So when he came back, I went to him and I said, Mr. President, can I have an audience? I want to see you on a private issue. He gave me an opportunity. We sat one-to-one, and I said, well, sir, you are the chairman of, Your Excellency, you are the chairman of AU, and you have made this statement at the AU meeting. It has been reported worldwide, but I will suggest you find a way out of this, because it's going to overstretch Nigerian armed forces. And I gave him the rundown on everything. And he thought about it. And the next day he called me and he said, I slept over what you told me and I found it is true. Luckily, he was in the military. So what do we do? I said, sir, that's why you are the president. Find out from the Ministry of Defense, External Affairs, and everywhere, how can we diplomatically get ourselves out of this embarrassing situation without portraying you losing face to your colleagues and the country losing its standard before the international community. And we found a way out of it. What am I saying? Loyalty does not mean you telling your boss what he wants to hear. Loyalty means telling him what he ought to do. And that is the issue of integrity. If you have integrity, you must tell your boss what he ought to know and what you think he ought to do, not what he wants to know or what he wants to do. My first year as Chief of Army Staff in 2003, I got into the office. There was going to be promotion from colonel to 2-star. And in our system, if you have failed the board 2, you have one chance. After the third attempt, if you cannot make it, close. So, a very highly placed Nigerian in government sent for me, called me, and I went to see him. And he discussed, he said, you see, this is the only officer from my area. He is now a lieutenant colonel, and he had missed his promotion to colonel twice. And I learned this is the last attempt. Could you please help me? I said, okay, Your Excellency, I'll see what I can do. Got back to my office. We set up the promotion board. The promotion board finished. They brought the result to me. As the Chief of Army Staff, by our system, I will now produce a memo that will be taken to the Army Council for promotion from Lieutenant Colonel and above. And I look at that candidate. In his area, there are 14 of them who were presented to the board. And there's only vacancy for 4. I sat drafting the memo. What do I do now? And the temptation, this is a highly placed Nigerian. What do I do? How would he feel? And this, I slept over it. The next night, in the night, I asked myself, what is integrity? Integrity is doing what you ought to do and not what you want to do. I finished my memo. 2 days after, I called him and I said, Your Excellency, I want to see you. He said, come. I went in. He was not there. I waited for him. He came in. And I said, Your Excellency, you made a request. And I'm sorry, I can't meet your demand. That officer cannot make it. He was number 12 out of 14. And there is vacancy for only 4. So, Chief, why? After all, those of you that are Christians, you know that there's a place in the Bible that says the first shall be the last, and the last shall be the first. So he quoted that for me. And I quickly told him, I said, Your Excellency, if you have a daughter that is very sick and she deserves a surgical operation, would you want her to do it? He said, yes. I said, but if you found out that the surgeon that is going to operate your daughter, out of 10 patients with similar disease you operated, only 1 survived. 9 died on this operation table. What would you do? So, no, my daughter will not go to that. I said, that is what the military is all about. They are going to take decision, making decision that will curtail people's life. And when you give mediocres the opportunity to take those decisions, they will make decisions that will kill people. And I went back to the religion very quickly and say, their blood will then be on my head because I put a mediocre to lead when he's not supposed to lead. What am I saying? You should know the capability of your men. And don't be afraid. The system may not be happy. Don't be afraid. But one thing I will tell you frankly is that till today, anywhere we meet with that person, even if I don't see him, he walks and talks to me. And I heard what he told other people about me, that that is a man of integrity. But if I have done what he wanted, he might have forgotten forever. And would I have created a mark? No. So, we have to be good followers and also good leaders. We don't have to compromise. You don't have to resign, because you cannot change a system outside the system. At one point, I'm honest with you, as a lieutenant colonel in the Nigerian army, I was accused at one point that I was among a group of people that were planning a coup. And God knows and heaven knows, I knew nothing about it. There was nothing about it. But remember the military. You want to get rid of those people you see as a threat when the next promotion comes. So you form stories. I was lucky I survived it. But I made sure that when I had the opportunity, such stories, because I have gone through it, even as chief of army staff, people who reported the security system, reported some officers to the system that they were planning coups, and we investigated it, and I found it was not true. And I told him one day the president said they must chuck them out of the army. And I said, Mr. President, you trusted me and made me your chief of army staff. They are army officers. Give me the responsibility. And if something happened, hold me responsible. He gave me the responsibility. And honestly, I found out and everything proved none of them had any connection about that. It was only some few friends that wanted to get them out of the system to be what they want to be. One of them became a senator after he retired from the military, because what he did and what we investigated was true. I can go on and on to say that, but let me leave that and say thank you very much.